Welcome back. We're talking about Donald Trump and the Republican National Convention. Joining us now from Cleveland is Republican political and communications strategist Mackowiak. Afshin Malawi is still with us here in Washington. And also joining us from the site of the convention is former Republican Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Thanks again to all of you. Congressman, let me start with you. Lots of talk coming out of the convention right now on unity in the Republican Party. There's some talk that it's in so much disarray right now that it might be beyond repair. And we saw party officials on day one put down a rebellion, something of an insurrection, by some delegates to try and change party rules. What does this tell you about the state of the party right now?
Oh, I think the state of the party is not a party in disarray at all. I think it is a party that's coming together. We recognize that Donald Trump talks to a lot of voters that have not been talking or engaged with the Republican Party for a long time. We want those new voters. We want those people joining the Republican Party. And sure, we're going through some changes and we're struggling with some of those, but we're a party that's coming together and come over the next 12, 13 weeks, we are going to be a party that's united and we're going to be positioned to be very successful in November.
Matt, what do you make of it? Donald Trump's just been, announced as the nominee for president for the Republican Party. He clearly does not have the support of the entire party. We've heard that. But I guess, on the other hand, he was the choice of voters, of Republican Party voters. So how does one explain that?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember we had a very large field, 17 candidates, probably more like 6 or 8 that went all the way through the first 4 states. And because the field was that large, Trump never really got a majority anywhere. So he won the nomination with a plurality. That made the need for party unification all the more pronounced. And so, look, I think it's fair to be critical about the unity efforts that happened right after he essentially ended the primary race in Indiana. I think he could have done a little bit better in that regard. But that said, look, party conventions exist for 2 reasons. One, to formally nominate the president and vice presidential candidates. But secondly, it's to unify parties going into the general elections. And so I agree with Chairman Hoekstra. We are seeing unity this week. I thought the vice presidential choice of Indiana Governor Mike Pence was an excellent move from Donald Trump. This is someone who's safe, who's solid, who's credible, who has policy knowledge, who reaches out to conservatives, who's well known among evangelicals, who has Washington experience, but has also been an executive in an important state like Indiana. And so I think by the end of this week, the party is going to be much more unified than it was coming in. Yes, there have been some disruptions. Yes, some frustrations have been aired by some delegates. But now that Trump is the nominee in terms of the delegates making that decision, there's really no choice going forward. It's now Hillary or Trump. Who do you want to be president for the next 4 years?
Congressman, what would you like to see come out of this convention at the end of the week in terms not just of party unity, but also in terms of what kind of direction the party is going to take?
Well, I think clearly the direction is already being set. This president or this presidential team is going to focus on national security. I thought a great case was laid out last night as to why Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have really been architects of a disastrous foreign policy. Tonight we're going to be talking about the economy. Those are the key issues that voters are concerned about. Who's going to get America moving forward again from an economic standpoint? Who's going to provide the leadership to make sure that America fights the threats that we face, this radical Islamic threat? How are we going to contain it, confront it, and ultimately defeat it? Those are the 2 issues that Americans are looking for leadership on, and that I think Donald Trump and Mike Pence are going to be able to provide.
Matt, our guest in the studio here, Afshin Malawi, made a great point in the earlier part of the show in which he said, look, Donald Trump has the support of the Republican base, but now the battle is going to be to get the support of independents. A lot of his policies, a lot of his announcements have been seen as radical, they're being seen as extreme. So what does he do now to get those independents?
Yeah, you often see this challenge presented to candidates for president, but also for candidates who run for U.S. Senate or governor. And that is, you generally have to run to your base in a primary, and you have to run to the middle in a general election. And so, look, I think Trump has real potential in reaching out to independents and into conservative Democrats, white working class in states like Michigan, where Chairman Hoekstra comes from, across the Rust Belt, he has a chance to perform better than expected in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan. If he could win 5 or 6 of those states, he could afford to lose states in the Southwest and still get to 270 electoral votes. So obviously he's going to need to fully unify the party. Right now he's at 80 or 85% of Republicans supporting him. He's got to get that above 90% to 92 or 93% by the time the election rolls around. But you got to do that while you're also reaching out to independent voters. It is a challenge. It's one that's facing him as he goes forward.
Afshin, Donald Trump has been accused of, bluster, of not telling the truth, of being not ready for the job.
Right.
But Republican Party officials tell us that at the end of this convention, we will see a very different Donald Trump. We will see someone who's ready to enter the White House.
Right. I think what we will see is we'll see a more human Donald Trump. I mean, particularly the fact that he has 4 of his adult children speaking about him. I think there's always a post-convention bounce, when we see these kind of things, and particularly when, by all accounts, he has produced 4 very able and dynamic and interesting children who are successful in their careers and have families, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think the question, though, about Donald Trump is that he won this election on some of that bluster, right? So if he suddenly becomes, timid, run to the center candidate Trump, will he be as appealing to some of his base as he was when he was, willing to challenge Republican orthodoxy, willing to say things that people thought politically incorrect? And in fact, when you talk to people who are his voters, they say, well, we like the fact that he didn't play the establishment game.
Right. Congressman, we just have about 40 seconds left. If you had to be giving advice to the Trump campaign right now, what would you be telling them?
I'd be telling them pretty much to stay on track. They've got to fine-tune and they've got to work out some of the wrinkles and those types of things. But in states like mine, states like Michigan, he's appealing to the independent voters right now. The blue-collar Democrat votes, Macomb County and those types of places, they like Donald Trump. Keep going out there, speak with a strong voice, stay on message, and you're going to be just fine.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us.